Okay. Let's draw again. Just going to sketch around a little bit. I think in the last video, I scribbled some of these just to kind of warm up a little bit. So this time, I think I'm going to draw something a bit more interesting than that now, hopefully. I think I might go back to drawing my Roman Legionnaires, since they've been a lot of fun to do. I did kind of sketch some up with ink, did a few ink sketches. They're not, they're pretty messy, but that's kind of the point. It's just conceptual, I guess. So I got a couple of warm-ups in there. Let me just adjust my chair. Okay. So I think I'll just play around a little bit, see what we come up with. So again, like the whole point of this series is just to, I guess, just give you an idea of how I draw. Just sketching, playing around, taking it easy. I'm not really interested in, like I might be able to do a good drawing, but maybe it won't be good. The whole point of this series is just kind of have fun drawing. I'm not gonna worry too much about proportions and things like that. So yeah, I want to go back to drawing the Roman Legionnaires just because they're just a lot of fun to draw, to be honest. You can tell I've been drawing them quite a lot in some of my other videos. And it's probably a subject that I'm going to stick with for a while. So I don't really know what this guy looks like. I've got a very fuzzy idea of him in my head, but I don't really know exactly how his face is going to turn out. So I'm just keeping my lines very simple, very vague. Nothing too crazy. And you'll notice that even when I'm drawing like soldiers and figures that are going to be wearing clothes and armor and things like that, I still draw the human form underneath it. So I'm still drawing his ears and the top of his head because, armor and clothing is sort of designed around human anatomy, right? So it makes sense that you've kind of got to draw what's underneath it. Might just take a quick measure of his head just so I can position his chest. Doesn't have to be perfect. What's important is that I just kind of keep drawing fast. Just to kind of keep the momentum up. All right, so I need to draw his eyes, which I'll just kind of sketch the sockets. Cheekbones, maybe. I think I'll leave his face there. I don't want to go too detailed with that. They got like these shoulder plates that they wear. And I'm just trying to think about the angle of those. Just sketching them in. I think they wear like because when I was researching Roman armor last year to sort of do that big drawing, I was just kind of trying to familiarize myself with all the different parts of it, and I think I noticed that they've got this sort of scarf that they wear around their neck. The chest plate is kind of joined together by like this leather strap here. Okay. So chest is going to be about there. And he's got like these sort of cylindrical forms on his armor there. I'll leave that there, I reckon. Let's draw the helmet. That's the fun part. So the helmet kind of sits just above the eyebrow. They've got that bit at the back of the helmet, which is more or less in line with the mouth, I've found. They've got these plates at the side of the face. And I guess they kind of dip down a little bit. Like I'm just kind of drawing from memory, just from what I remember. There's loads of different types of Roman helmets. because, you know, it was an empire that lasted for centuries. So naturally, there's going to be some variations of the armor. But I'm kind of just going off what I remember more or less from my own research that I was doing, and just going from there. Now we've got this sort of, it's like some kind of visor that wraps around the front about there, if I remember correctly. Yeah, something like that. There's this sort of thing that curls around the top of the ear and then drops down to like this sort of flap at the back of the helmet. So I'll just transfer that to the other side as well. Might actually just make that a bit skinnier. All right. Now I'm going to just I'll just start gently hatching in the shadow shapes. Just keeping it loose for now. Might just switch pencils to do this. But what's your favorite subject to draw? Let us all know in the comment section below. I think it's pretty cool getting to know other people and other artists and knowing what kind of things they like to create. Mine right now is well, it's a combination of things. Like I love drawing architecture, like classical architecture. But I've also been enjoying these sort of sketches of soldiers and military history and things like that. It's been a really cool sort of experience. So I think I want the light source to sort of be coming directly from the side here. So what I'll do, I'll shade everything on this side of the helmet is going to sort of be in shadow. I'm just going to hatch over that completely. Same with his face on this side, I think. I think I'm just going to make that all shadow on this half of the nose. Just because I think that's going to be a pretty powerful image. It's amazing how much a good drawing relies on light and shadow. And then this flap of like the visor or whatever it is kind of facing downwards, so that would be in shadow too. So I'm just trying to look for interesting shadow shapes at this point, and I'm just lightly shading them in. I don't want to go too dark at this point of the drawing. His nose. Just gonna try and maybe refine that. Come back to that later. His mouth. And then so this kind of this part here, this sort of face panel on the helmet, I can't remember the name of. I remember researching all these different types of Roman equipment, and I can't remember the name of them. But I'm thinking that would be casting a shadow, and I think for the sake of simplicity, I'm kind of just gonna do a really simple shadow shape and just cast it across his face like that. Even though that might not be technically accurate, I think it's gonna make for a more interesting drawing. And that's what I do with shadow shapes. I try to create interesting drawings. I'm not really too concerned about what's accurate and what isn't. So I'm just going to kind of sketch these shadow shapes in here. Okay, so let's try and maybe refined some of these shadow shapes that we got, because we got some interesting ones here. Just gonna kind of chip back into it with my eraser. Might just lighten that was a little bit too dark. Let's just trying to think about the planes of the eye that we did in the last sketch that we did. And I'm just trying to think, you know, I want that to sort of be the eyelid right there. And it's kind of hard to explain, but I'm kind of drawing these abstract shadow shapes, but I'm still kind of thinking about the planes of the eye as well. And I'm trying to do both at the same time, I guess. But you know, if I don't like anything, if there's anything I don't like, I can just bring my eraser back into it, refine the shape a bit more. Because it's amazing how much information is conveyed just through light and shadow. So, you know, when I do these sketches, I kind of like to take my time and, you know, while I'm not necessarily calculating where each shadow is going to fall, because that's kind of impossible on a human figure, I'm still trying to develop shadow shapes that, I guess, make sense. So we kind of got a bit of a figure coming to life here. Doesn't look too bad. I'm really trying to push the core shadows, and I'm really trying to separate them from the lights as much as I can. So I'm going to spend a lot of time just in this part here, just refining the face. Because I think if you can sort of develop the face, then the rest of the image kind of comes to life. I don't have to worry too much about what's happening down here. As long as I can make this part up here look good, then mission accomplished. I could go on to do like a more refined drawing of this guy, like make it larger and maybe do a few more close-up studies of the face and like what's going on with the shadows there. That's also an option. But yeah, I'm always going back into it with my eraser because I'm just trying to edit the shapes a little more. Okay, I'm gonna clean up this area in light. That's the thing, like I wanna keep the light areas nice and clean. I don't really want to touch any of the lights because most of the shadows are doing most of the work for me. I'm gonna draw his nostril right there, and then maybe. So it's funny, even though I'm not explicitly drawing the planes of the nose, I'm still thinking about them for when I'm drawing these shadow shapes. I'm trying to identify the shadows around them. So it's like, you know, for example, like in this sketch, I was drawing the planes of the eye so I can see where the shadows of the eye are going to fall. And that helps drawing that way. But when I'm working on these sketches, I kind of just want to keep the drawing simple and just really let the shadows do the work. So even though I'm not drawing the planes, I'm still thinking about the planes, if that makes sense. And I'm just proceeding very carefully now because I kind of like what I've got on the page. I'm just being careful not to ruin it because that can happen. It happens all the time with me. Sometimes I just push the drawing too far and then I end up making a mess of it somehow. Very common occurrence. I think that's the hardest part is you know, knowing when to stop. Knowing when enough is enough. And you know, in this shadowy area, I'm being very nondescript. You know, like I'm putting in that core shadow. I'm going to come in here and put some darker shadows. So this would be the ambient occlusion. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that side of rendering, but you know, if you want to make something more real, ambient occlusion is a great tool for you to use. And basically what it is it's like the really deep shadows. It's like those really dark parts of the shadows that aren't receiving light at all. And so you can imagine that as his face sort of becomes more and more obscured under the helmet, there would be these really dark areas, these really just areas of darkness. And I'm just kind of hatching into the shadow shape here, just keeping my strokes nice and light, very nondescript. Might darken that bit a bit more maybe. But yeah, spending a lot of time just going over it, hatching over it very carefully, not working too slow, but not working too fast. Just working at a pace that is comfortable for me. And I'm thinking, I kind of want to, I don't know if it's a bit risky, but I kind of want to get like maybe his top eyelid in light, just like a fraction of it. I'm just wondering what that's going to look like. So I'll just kind of go in with the eraser there. And I'll see if I can just kind of sharpen it up a little. I don't know if that, yeah, it doesn't look, yeah, I don't know. It's not too bad. But yeah, so far I'm only rendering the shadows. And I'm getting quite a lot of information out of my image. So, you know, if you can learn to render and, you know, learn the science of rendering and how to apply it on buildings and figures and things like that, you'll end up getting pretty strong results. So I might just go into the halftones a little bit. So like I'm just trying to draw where his cheek would sort of hit the edge of his nose. I'm just going to do that very lightly. Okay, so let's come up to this visor. I might draw the shadow being cast from the visor and dropping down on this side of the helmet, and then it'll just kind of fade out into this shadow color here. So it's going to be a little stronger on this side. Cast shadows typically, I think in outdoor scenes, they are typically darker than shades. And I think it's the opposite for indoor scenes. I mean, I read that from somewhere. I can't actually remember where I read that now, but I remember that was sort of the general rule. Just gonna... Okay, let's draw some details here. I always keep coming back to that face. I need to get a move on with the rest of the drawing. Okay, let's, you know what, let's tidy up some of this. So now let's think about maybe rendering some of the armor. I don't want to tidy it up too much. It's just a sketch. So armor has a very reflective quality. And again, I want to keep it pretty basic for this sketch. I don't want to go too hard in reflections. So I've got to kind of think about, well, the light source is coming from this side and the shadows are on this side. So I'm thinking maybe so it's like the sunlight would be hitting that side of the helmet right there. And then as this face panel kind of curves under a little bit. So I'm thinking maybe I'll just very lightly hatch that area there. Just make it a very gradual shift into light. That probably works. This is coming out, this plane here is facing a different angle. It's kind of perpendicular to this plane, almost. So I'm thinking there would be a tiny bit of reflection up there. So I just need to lighten some of these lines because otherwise the rendering's not gonna be believable. Let me render this part in here, which I think is meant to be dark anyway. Or at least darker. All right. And then I'm just going to be a little bit brave here, and I'm going to go in with fairly heavy hatching strokes, like that. And then I'll make them a little bit lighter as the form comes down. So, you know, when you're trying to render reflections, it is tricky. But you kind of just got to keep it simple. You just got to think about the direction of the light and where the reflections of the highlights are going to be. And I just keep it simple, at least in a sketch like this. And then there'd be like a little bit of darkness where that plane joins that one. And then it will kind of turn into light because the light source is coming this direction. So anything on the top and on the side is in light. You can see how this kind of curls up like that. So maybe that looks all right. I'm just going to make that a little bit heavier, that side. And I'm going to make this, where these two planes meet at this junction, I'm going to make that a little bit darker. Because reflection, like reflective surfaces, you'll notice they tend to do that. It's like there'll be like a tone that kind of just runs along the border of a shape, if that makes sense. Same deal on this side, I suppose. So I just got to think about I think I'll make this, I'll make this plane a bit darker. Because, you know, reflective surfaces, they're still affected by ambient light. And so there's going to be like a lot of ambient light on this side. So I guess to enhance that, I'll darken this plane. Now, obviously, I'm just kind of, everything I draw is just an estimation. It's not really true to reality, as you've probably figured out by now. Even though it probably looks believable, it's still not you know, like I'm just doing this all from my head. So I can only make an estimation with these things. I can't really compete with reality. I've got to design it. I've got to design these drawings to make them look good. So anytime I'm thinking about making this bit light or this bit dark, it's an educated guess, but more importantly, it's a design decision on my part. And that's how I think about drawing in realism. I don't think realism is about copying from photos exactly. Although you can learn from photographs. I certainly have. You know, you do learn from references. But more importantly, it's a design decision. And you just got to ask yourself, instead of trying to draw what looks real, try to think about what's going to make the drawing look good. I think that's an even better question to ask yourselves. You know, what's going to make it look good? What's going to make it look cool? Because I think that's way more important than just realism for the sake of realism, you know? And, you know, if you're going to draw from imagination, then you kind of have to... You kind of have to keep it simple. You have no choice. Like I said before, you can't compete with reality, so why would you do that? Okay, he's looking pretty cool. Kind of happy with this guy. Let's just... I just want to clean up some of this. And then I just kind of want to go over it, but I'm just going to leave a slight gap here. See that? And that just kind of gives the illusion of like this detail having a highlight on it. Same here with this bit, like there's a bit of a trim that's kind of running along the edge of the helmet maybe. Let's... I'm going to tone this part as well. Just to kind of hint that there's maybe like a reflection on this side of the helmet there. Just kind of makes that look a bit more reflective, at least to me anyway. Well, this drawing turned out okay. I should probably try and finish it at some point. I'll have to come back to it and see if I can maybe finish him. I should probably end the video soon, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm having a little bit of fun with this guy. So I think I'll just go for a few more minutes. I don't know if you guys are enjoying watching me. But it's like I was saying in the last video, you know, like sometimes we learn a lot by just watching other people draw. That's certainly the case for myself. Like I've read a lot of books about drawing and perspective and things like that, things of that nature. But I always learn best just by watching other artists. And they didn't really explain much to me. I would just watch them. I would watch them draw. I would try to figure out why they were making the marks that they were making. And then I'd kind of just, from there, go off and do my own thing. And I think that was probably the number one thing that helped my art practice. So that's kind of why I'm doing these videos, so that you guys can just kind of watch me and maybe you get something out of it. I don't know. I feel like at this point, to draw the rest of the armor, I might need a reference because my imagination is a little bit hazy right now. I'm just trying to think. I don't know. I'm struggling to think. Maybe I just need a break. I think this kind of went a little bit overboard. Like I was only meant to do a fairly quick sketch, and it's just kind of gone on a bit longer than I anticipated, I think. But you know what? My rule for art, just a general rule, is if you're having fun with it, keep going. No point in stopping. Be a shadow coming on this bit. I remember that there's these sort of little details on the side of the helmet. It's like these circular things, which I'll just sketch in. I don't really know what they are. I think they're just decoration, but There's definitely some kind of detail right here. I might just lighten that up so it doesn't break the drawing. Well, that's all right for a sketch. I think I might leave that one there. Man, it's time consuming drawing in pencil. I'll need to experiment maybe drawing a sketch, like an outline with pencil, and then filling it in with ink, because that would probably make the process a lot simpler and a lot quicker too. It's just the rendering. What else am I missing? I'm definitely missing something. They usually have like this, it's like a leather strap. I think it's to carry the holster for like their gladius. And it goes, it like runs across their chest. I think they've got another one in the opposite direction for the holster for the dagger, maybe. But there's definitely, yeah, there's something in there. I'll just shade that in very lightly. Maybe I'll draw another one of these guys in the next video, and we'll see if we can get a better result from it.